Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unique Peace. I am Janice. I'm a Reiki Master Teacher here on Long Island, New York, and I'm also your host of Unique Peace, the podcast all about peace. Today, I'm super excited to have the fabulous Stefano Da Frè on. He is an actor, a producer, and a filmmaker. He has recently made award-winning films such as The Day I Had to Grow Up, The Girl Who Couldn't Speak, and most recently, Stolen Dough, which you can now watch on Amazon. So I highly recommend it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Stefano is great to be in contact with and work with. And today we're going to find out what brings him peace. Hello, Stefano. Good
Janice, thank you so
morning.
much for having me.
So, how are you this morning?
I just came out of a Bikram yoga class, which is my segue into peace
Nice.
and discipline. I woke up at 7:30 in the morning, and I have never been an early riser. I was a hardcore party kid, up late till 4 o'clock. I worked as a bartender, and I loved that life. But in all the physical things that I've ever done, in any practice, any exercise, the only thing that I have a burning desire for to rise and have discipline for, aside from the work that I do that I love, is Bikram yoga. I love hot yoga, and it just, I was just saying this to you in the green room before, that I think that discipline and peace, there are, you have to have a burning desire for these things.
Yeah.
Your burning desire opens up to peace, to discipline. If you muscle your way through them, it's not going to work.
No,
It's not
it's
going to sustain itself long term.
no, you absolutely. So you kind of touched a little bit on how you started your practice, and so kind of walk us through, because you are a filmmaker and you've made some great films, award-winning films, and you recently released Stolen Dough here in the States
Yeah,
on Amazon and apparently Apple TV as well. I didn't know about that, so
yeah.
you guys check it out there. um, Kind of walk us through how you started. How did you get to where you are?
Career wise,
Yeah, career-wise.
career wise. I look, in I was always in the arts and always went to art school, but I did a film in 2018 about a woman's shelter in New York City, and it was my first ever documentary, and it was called The Girl Who Cannot Speak, and it featured 5 women from different backgrounds, different age groups, and then one girl who is underage, who doesn't say anything. And it's about sexual abuse. And this was concurrent with the Me Too movement, and NBC had bought this little film, licensed, actually is the right correct term, licensed this little film that I had done and directed, and gave me kind of a touch, like a bunch of press for Meet the Press, and I was on Andrea Mitchell's show, and I was on the American Film Institute and AFI, and that's sort of the time that I was taken more seriously as a filmmaker. There was a real kind of glow to that, and that was 6 years ago in my life. It was the first time that I had ever done press or national press for a baby film that I had done, and I learned a lot about that. I learned a lot about packaging. I learned a lot about content, making films that I like to do, but also how to dress them up. Um, Stolen Dough could have never been made if it wasn't financed by the Russo brothers. And the Russo brothers were huge. I got a grant from Agbo, which is like, they make Marvel movies. So I think I think that being an independent filmmaker, I've never wanted to be an independent filmmaker. I've always wanted to work for a studio, and and uh, and that's my my path. And I think that it's um, you know it's not for everybody, because there's so many different conceptual problems and things that you have to conceive. So your integrity matters very much. Your peace matters very much. How you have integrity in uh, decision making situations where people may not have the same integrity is so fundamentally important. And I I believe that in that integrity is the glow, right? It's what keeps people attracted to the quality of what you're doing. And Stolen Dough is a great movie. It's I love the film. I think it's the best film I've done. And it's my first feature film.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and just for your audience,
Congratulations.
just to know a little bit, it's about pizza. It's a David and Goliath story about an inventor who has a patent and invents stuffed crust pizza and shops it around to various different pizza chains, and then gets into a negotiation with Pizza Hut. But he's a young boy when he negotiates this deal. He doesn't have an NDA or have someone to guide him.
Right.
And 7 months later, the worst nightmare happens. They launch. They say, we're not interested in your product. We're not interested in licensing this idea. It sounds too fantastical. And then the worst nightmare happens. 7 months later, someone calls him up and says, "Congratulations! I just heard that Pizza Hut is doing stuffed crust pizza. That's amazing." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, that's your idea. That's your patent." And that's the story of Stolen Dough. It was a totally true story, and we use real footage from the legal deposition, which is amazing and awkward and dramatic to watch. It was
Wow.
a $1 billion lawsuit.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that's a lot to take in, and to walk someone, to create somebody's story or recreate somebody's story of what they went through. And it's kind of like there's a documentary called not Pizza, Pepsi, Where's My Jet? It's kind of along
exactly.
those same lines, only it's in a documentary movie form, which is very cool. So
You know,
congratulations on that.
what's so cool is that I love that you mentioned that, because when I was negotiating with our sales agent, they ask us for comps, right? Which is a short term for comparables. What are your comparables? What are your sales comparables? And Pepsi Was My Jet was always my sales comp. And I always say that Stolen Dough is like Pepsi Where's My Jet, except we get there a lot quicker. And we don't belabor the audience. It's a nice. It's just about it's a feature, but it's a shorter length feature for the Gen Zers that are watching, or anybody. So it's not a 3 hour 3-part series. We get straight to the case right
Nice,
away.
nice, awesome. So we do hope people check it out, because now there's a couple of options to watch it. So
Yeah,
that's great. Congratulations.
thank you.
And throughout that process, and like you had mentioned, maintaining integrity. How does maintaining integrity help you when you define peace personally for yourself?
Well, I think that it makes you sleep well with yourself at night. It makes you feel that the decisions you're making are for the right reasons. Last year at this time, I was just talking to a business partner of mine, and we had walked away from a television show, which was an AI jury show, and it was hard to walk away. But the
Yeah.
person that was doing it had no integrity, and was first of all, I'm not a judgmental person, but this person was, I found them personally to just be awful. And I didn't like them as producers, and I didn't trust them. And I think integrity, if you keep that integrity, then you have peace, because you're making work that is closer to, you can digest the moments, the quiet moments after you're done your job, and to feel like it's really worthwhile, you know.
It is.
Yeah, that's what integrity is for me. It's a bridge to, it's a bridge for personal peace, personal authenticity. And there's it's a bumpy road, you know. It's not like I have it. I don't think any of your listeners should listen to anyone who says they have it figured out. It's not figured out. It's a question. It's a value that I think about consistently every project I work on. And it's hard. It's a very hard thing to do.
Yes, and welcome, Michael. And
Yeah,
he
Michael.
agrees. Its
Yeah.
integrity is a key to happiness and peace for sure. It's like I totally agree, and I'm sure many of my listeners agree that when you have integrity, you can sleep well at night, even if it's hard. you you can sleep well at night knowing you did what was right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I personally have walked away from things that were, no, this isn't right. It doesn't feel right, or someone shows you their true colors. You're like, oh, I can work with this person, and all of a sudden you're like, maybe not. Maybe.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting road to take, but it's a good one to take, I think. And when you find that integrity helps you to find personal peace for yourself, it helps you find that personal peace. So we discussed about yoga, which is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
How else do you find peace?
Well, before I was married, I would have said going to the MoMA, because I was an artist member. I still am an artist member, but um I would go to galleries. I'm not a good painter by any stretch of the imagination, but I love conceptual design. I love modern design. I love lighting and lenses and production design, and the thematic aspects of filmmaking. And I would be inspired often with a script, or take a project or an idea, and I would just walk around. I walk around the gallery, mostly the permanent collection at the MoMA. I was just there like 2 weeks ago, and I always go to like the fourth and fifth floor, and it's like, 4 Van Goghs, 2 Yves Kleins. There's like 3 Pollocks. There's
I
4
love
Rothkos. Yeah, I mean, the permanent collection is incredible, and you get inspired by other artists' work and their ability to translate their work and to speak to you in their own communication. And that inspires me a lot. I look at a lot of people's work. I actually look at a lot of painters more than I do watch, obviously, a lot of filmmakers. I love David Fincher, and I love Pablo Neruda. Not Pablo Neruda, the guy who did the Pablo Neruda movie, and he did Emma as well. Oh man, it's gonna kill me. He's Pablo Larraín. He's a Chilean filmmaker, so like very obscure. But there's a lot of people that I love. I mean, I love Scorsese, and I love, Iñárritu, and I love fucking Ridley Scott. But I look at filmmakers' work. I like looking at how things are made, and And I also, honestly, to zen out from artwork. This is going to sound really weird to listeners. I actually follow a lot of Wall Street information. I watch CNBC every day. I try to watch CNBC, maybe, an hour of CNBC every day. And it's for your listeners who don't know, it's the business channel offshoot of NBC. And it's great. It's great because I think a lot of artists don't learn or are not taught that it's valuable to be financially literate. And financial literacy is a thing, I think, as I'm getting older, to become more passionate about, in terms of, education and programs, and working with people that have no financial literacy, and there's a barrier to that language. And so I think there's a thing that I find comforting about, more than the news, right? The news, who's going to watch? It's just it's a crack show. It's a comedy show, and a nightmare at the same time.
Yeah.
But what's nice about financial news is that there are Republicans and Democrats who want to make money, and there are people who are investors who are as passionate about solar panels and wind as they are in oil. And you are aware, I think 6 months, I would say, in advance of changes in the world. NVIDIA, the Blackwell chip, what is AI going to mean? What will AI do to color correction and different aspects of filmmaking? What are we on right now on YouTube? What's the value? Why is Disney stock at a 5-year low? Why do actors not understand that the streamers don't make any money? This is so fundamental to the business that I'm in. Actors don't understand that they have tons of revenue, but Disney and everybody else followed Netflix's model when they were not profitable. They ended up buying up other assets and going straight to streaming and direct to consumer. But this was not a profitable model, because Netflix essentially kind of front loaded and lied, hustled Wall Street. And so everybody else followed suit. And so that's why, the disintegration of media landscapes is happening before our very eyes. Paramount mixed in with CBS and Viacom, and the winner actually is this platform you're on right now. Nobody knows what YouTube is worth. If in the streaming wars, YouTube is probably going to be one day more valuable than the entire corporation of Disney. It's watched more hours. And so the trying to get people who are artistically minded to understand how to get their material on certain platforms and how to sell themselves on certain things. I think that's the part of me that is like not an independent kind of filmmaker, is like the part of me who is, is sort of, I like to hold a lot of ideas at the same time, and I can sort of see the corporate side and what the risk is. There's always risk. Everybody's got risk. No one thinks they're underpaid. Everyone thinks that, they're getting the bad end of the deal. There's a lot of risk, and infrastructure of doing this broadcast and managing content on YouTube is a tremendous hassle and a huge job, and not losing that this company, Alphabet, obviously, that owns YouTube and owns Google, doesn't lose to Sam Altman and OpenAI. They're fighting basically for their life. If they lose search, this model for YouTube is not going to exist. So they have to get generative AI and right for their business model to sustain all the other businesses. For the same way, if you look at Amazon Web Services, the web services of Amazon sustain the business of retail. The retail business is a nothing business. The margins are 3%. You would never believe that they barely make profit on it. Yes, they make a lot of revenue, but they don't make a lot of profit. Their profit machine is the cloud, AWS, Amazon Web Services. So having artists, just to summarize,
Yeah.
Go understand the landscape that they're in. It's not enough to just be an artist, to be making art. You're not just going to be discovered, or you have to understand what's going on in the world. And I find therapeutically when I watch CNBC, you only need to do an hour a day. You only need to do an hour a day. And just to find out, just listen. At first, you're not going to understand everything. It's like French, a lot of words, a lot of terms, but you'll pick it up eventually. And it's meant for a colloquial audience, and that's a good thing for artists to learn about, and how to set up their retirement too.
Right. And so you take all of that knowledge and you take your inspiration from MoMA and from watching other filmmakers. Now, do you find that when you're making something, because your films are the humanitarian lens,
Sure.
they take a true, this is what people are going through, this is what's happened to people aspect, and made it very, not always palpable, but understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you find, how do you find peace in making those kinds of films, taking and drawing on inspiration from everywhere else?
I think that those films, the reasons that I choose the content for those films and I make them humanistic, and I'm not afraid to make them intimate, even awkwardly in some moments intimate, um, is is I'm looking. I I would like to say I'm trying to share something, but it's actually I'm looking for that. I'm looking for something that is more real. I think if I was 10 years younger, I would have probably said something generic like it's just what I'm sharing with the audience or whatever. But the truth is, I'm making those movies because I'm trying to peer through the veil of trying to look for real things. I'll give you another example of a film that's not even out yet. I did a film, a feature film, my second feature, that is about a Japanese soldier, a young Japanese soldier, and a Korean comfort woman who was a sex worker, and the fact that Korean comfort women were treated terribly and brutally raped, and yet this was a true story of the two of them, and their relationship is a bond, but it's not. They're not equals. For me, I like nuclear bomb type issues. I like ideas that are not one sided. I'm really interested in the fact that human beings, I believe, my worldview is that human beings are very messy. They're very inconsistent. They're very messy. They're imperfect, and they are contradictory. And that's not a bad thing at all. But I am fascinated to distill that in the work that I do. When it comes to Stolen Dough and a pizza movie, it's very, I have the person whose life is being carried on film who thinks everything in their life that happened to them is important, which you have to straddle a line and say, it's not. You're not. It's you have to find what is universal in some people's stories, and sort of not indulge too much in the because I did it, or because there's got to be. And so the only way I do that is because there's two sides to a story. I love three sides to a story as well. I
Yeah.
really I love that. I love the imperfections of people. I think that's very good, clear filmmaking, and it's that weight is good enough for people because they're like that in their own lives anyway. I mean, they're really like that.
Yeah. There's the old adage, there's your side, their side, and the truth, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Um, so, and Now, the movie you were just speaking of regarding the I know what time period that was around in
Second
the
World War.
story of, yeah, the Korean comfort women and that whole background that had to be difficult.
Yeah,
And so when you take a story like that, or the girl who cannot speak, and you're telling those kind of stories in that kind of documentary, how do you help others find peace, or what is the goal in helping others find peace? Because those are tragic. As a survivor
yeah,
myself, and knowing the history of what happened in World War II, and even kind of in the Vietnam War too. They don't really mention that, but it did happen then.
absolutely.
Kind of like your goal is to tell this beautiful story and help others, but how do you kind of like find the peace to help others find peace?
Okay, okay.
That's
So
layered, I
now
know.
we're really going into it, right? This is now we're in it. We're through the eye of the needle, right? The needle, right? So okay, there's I would say there's three things. There's the chargedness of abuse, trauma, rape. That's charged. Okay, that's not enough. It also has to be good art, and having the ability to respect, respond, acknowledge, communicate with that first part, and then bridge it to the second part. You're choosing how to share that story. And the integrity part comes from knowing that these things are charged, and things that are stories that are complex are are worthwhile to tell. It's actually more human to explain the mistakes that people made with the trauma, and that there may be some people that had a better experience than others, although 90% had an awful experience.
Right.
And I think showing those interesting stories to me are they're that's what fascinates me. Things that, that's what I think is in the movie, in the Soldier and the Butterfly. I really worried. I have a rape scene, but I don't shoot it like a rape scene. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like sex gone wrong, in a sense. Like, one person is blindfolded, the other person blindfolds the other person, and then there's no communication of when to stop, or how far it's going to go. And that's interesting to me, because I think people are like that in a lot of ways. I like, to me it's very, like, it's so not, this is very harsh to say, but it's boring to me. I'm not that type. I'm not a filmmaker who's just going to do, like, just do a general standard kind of abuse story. If you want that, you know how the movie's going to end. There's no reason. You're just churning out that, and that has a place. By the way, there's amazing movies that are like that. That's just not me. That's not me. That's not what I'm good at. I'm interested in that, plus some other side, and something else, and the fact that maybe the soldier who's Japanese is scared and 19 in this story, and doing something he thinks he ought to do with a woman. That's interesting to me. And it makes him still wrong, but it's interesting to me. And that's where I think that's you're touching things that are, you're trying to give space for everybody's humanity, as long as you don't forget, the underlying picture, right? You don't change the reality. You don't alter the facts of what comfort women really went through. So I mean, and that's a skill. That's just fucking skill. That's integrity, right? You have to trust yourself to know that you can share a story and also keep the overall integrity and share that at the same time, and that people will understand. They will see that, because there's lots of people, there's a lot of players on the chessboard, and they all move in different ways. And yeah, yeah, I if I was doing a film about Gaza and the Israeli war, I would love to do that. I'd love to. I could see two sides right away.
Right away.
And I could see the ultimate devastation, obviously, of the Palestinians. And I'm I can really, I like that. To me, it's some people, by the way, are filmmakers, artists. They're very uncomfortable. They're just not built in that kind of way. And what is harder is they're afraid to think thoughts that are that have two sides, because they don't want to be seen as being unsympathetic. And I just don't buy that. I don't believe in that. That's not my philosophy. I don't think that's not integrity to me.
Beautiful. So aside from filmmaking, which is very much important in your life, how do you help bring peace to those in your life?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the hardest task that we have in this media landscape, which is to listen. Listening is the greatest gift, to be an active listener. There's a lot of material, a lot of books, a lot of studies and research, if you really are interested in the active form of being an active listener. It is a great gift to give someone your attention and your focus silently, and then to respond. That's how you bring peace to people. And I think that's part of my upbringing, and a contrast to things that I've seen in my life and people I've known, and how many people I know that need someone to listen to, and that everybody needs that. And that's, it goes as deep as you can go, right? We stop listening to the point where it's just too fucking much. It's just too much of a burden to listen. So we don't know where to place all that thing that we're taking in when we're listening. So getting clear with yourself before you're about to listen is so fundamental. So fundamental. And anybody who is really in a healthy relationship, or I'm recently married, as of April 2023. It's a big fundamental part to a relationship, staying together, and working through all the different layers of being married, and just different lives into one life, or what the idea of, and every relationship is different, because it's an agreement. You're signing over an agreement to each other. You're committing an agreement that is not based, doesn't have to be based on what anyone else has done. It's for you guys. And yeah, I'm listening is a good task for a husband.
It's a very good task for many, because the art of active listening is very hard. You have to listen to respond, not react. And people don't realize there is a difference. When you're actively listening, and this is from personal experience and taking classes on it, you're listening to try and understand and assess what the person is saying to you, and not responding in a defensive manner. It's like, okay, it's like we have, like you said, we have this problem, or you want to fully understand what she's saying. By the same token, you want her to fully understand what you're saying. but nobody, if you interrupt or interject, you're not really listening to understand. You're listening to respond or be defensive. So it brings a lot of peace when you feel listened to, acknowledged, heard. And like you said, it does solve a lot of problems too. It's like, and you don't have to agree. That's the beauty of it, is I hear you, I understand what you're saying, I still don't agree, and you have to work from there. But at least you don't interrupt and try and make your point heard all the time.
I think that's right. You know, it's a hard thing for people to stay to have to acknowledge not convincing the other person, right? Like, there are certain things politically my wife and I disagree about. And not so much about political parties, but I would say some things that have to do with censorship or free speech. And that's interesting. I like her perspective. She has something else. That's why I married her. You know, she has another way. Sometimes I think that she's, there's a lot more underneath that. But there's also there's something to receive. There's something sweet. And there's something also that maybe is less charged by just, not getting worked up over certain things. And I think that's a good quality in any couple that listens to each other, and friends too. You accept your friends. I've had friends I'm about to see my best friend that I've been friends with for, Daniel McSherry was the best man to my wedding, and I'm gonna see him on my birthday in August. And wow, you know each other's flaws, and it's wild. I mean, it's just wild to see your friends that you've been friends with, to see their flaws and you just love them. And sometimes you can help them self-direct, but ultimately they're going to go down their path, and you're just there if they want if they want some advice.
I'm kind of at that point with my son. He's a teenager, and we're getting very close to the point of where you have to fly. It works that way with very close friendships and in parenthood, which is a lot more challenging. At least with friends, you're like, I'm going to hang up now. I love you. Call me when you're calmer. And my last question is always, what's in your toolbox? So, like, you're on set. They're very chaotic or very heated, and lots of personalities at any given time. How do you kind of, like, what's your go-to to calm the situation down? How do you bring everybody, like, to a center when you're in a moment where it's just, we all have the same goal? Shh, let's get on the same page.
It's a very good question, and I have three answers. One is more of the communicative thing, and then the other two are practical. Actually, I have three answers, and these are four answers. They're all truthful. Obviously, all truthful answers. This whole conversation has been truthful, but they sound ridiculous. But they're that's the preface of them. First is, I always have Tylenol on set. I have a bottle of Tylenol with me on set, no matter what. I have a director's chair, and people will set them up for me, but I never quite am comfortable sitting. There's too much. I feel like there's too much at stake, and there's a lot of bodies. And as I've grown, and with our company, there's, you go from 10 people to 12 to 40 people on set, and that's a lot of bodies in a lot of different departments. So Tylenol on set. The second thing is, I already have a very focused intense, passionate personality. I don't have coffee until we make it to the afternoon, until it's after lunch, and I can sort of, I love an afternoon with the crew and sitting with them in the camera department and the sound department, and going over the scenes with the actors. But I never have coffee in the morning. I'll have green tea, and the reason is I don't want to spike those adrenaline levels on top of the work that I have. So I usually only drink green tea with like milk or almond milk, and then water, and I stay really hydrated. That's really important. It's a lie. I would be lying to say that I get a lot of sleep before sets. I'm usually doing a lot of last minute changes. I try to sleep. Usually get about 4.5, 5. But if I'm working long sets for weeks, it's 5 hours. Okay, that's the other thing. Is I'm a big believer in holding on to your master shot list and having all departments having your shot list with you. So it's essentially your brain, your brain's setup of what you're doing. What do you can pivot off that, but if I would not thrive in an environment being unprepared, and the reason is I've worked with so many directors who did prepare shot lists, and I always found them very amateurish, and that's a judgmental place, and I'm not happy saying that, but I just didn't think that they were the real deal, and that they were real artists, really real directors, because they were not prepared. And in fact, if you're the director, nobody has to be a director, but you're saying that you're captain of the ship. And there's no reason, just because you're a director, that anybody should listen to you. You have to earn that. And that earning is in preparation, I think, in preparation. And the last thing I would say is I do a communicative public speaking. I get everyone together and I say, here's the day, here's what I'm thinking. And I find this very helpful. Sometimes when we're lighting something and we'll take a long time, and it'll be my idea of how I set up the shot list and what I wanted, I am the first one to call out my mistakes. A crew will respond better to you, and you say, you know what, actually guys, I fucked this up. I thought we were looking at this angle, the way that he was going to come in through the door, but I'm realizing now I probably need to look the opposite way. So listen, take another 15 minutes. I'm going to keep rolling, even if the lighting's not perfect, but I need to change. I have, people will respond better if the person who is in charge will admit that they've made a mistake. Then they'll trust me when it's like, no, this is really worth the time. We're staying. We're doing another 30 minutes of this. That's so important, and I guess it comes down to integrity, but admitting, people like being around someone who is aware of their mistakes. And you can have, crazy idea. You can have very, strong ideas, and you can, and I ask for a lot of people's opinions. I don't pick up, maybe pick out of 7 opinions. I'll sometimes pick number 3, and I'll explain to 1, 4, and 5, and 6. I go, they're all good ideas, but this is why we're not going that way. But admitting when you're wrong to your crews, is just a lesson I've learned it's taken me a decade. These are all, they're practical things, but they set up the tone of how everything is. I also try, if there's political talk on set, because I work with a lot of people that are Republican, Democrats, Independents, I don't chime in. I was working on a TV show when Israel had just been hit by Iran and had the airstrikes, and their dome had stopped it, right? And so you have a whole bunch of opinions on the set of, people that are Jewish, and they're just like, this is incredible. No other country would have to put up with this, and they have their point, and that's good. And then the other one is responding to being strike back. That's the one rule I sort of have in terms of dialogue. I really keep away from political talk. I would much, dirty jokes, fucking whatever. You can even swear. I think that's a real, because it's a really, we're a team, your family, and it's not the time. It's not the time.
I,
you know. that's sort of a sort of rule that I kind of institute.
And I think that's a good rule.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. It's people are very passionate about their politics, and when you're trying to accomplish something such as making a movie or creative piece, it's keeping it out is a better way. Not saying no, you can't talk about it, just not here.
Yeah, of course. And there are going to be people from different backgrounds that I hire. My AC on my second camera is from Hong Kong. I've got someone in the cam who's my camera operator, grew up in Cameroon. And so everyone is different and has a different perspective. And so in the same way, this is what is, you can say as an artist that you like lots of people's different points of view, but it's hard work in your own life.
Yeah.
When you're around all these individuals that are part of your team, to institute that and allow those separate, all those points of view. Okay, let's flush them out. And then let's get back to story. Let me tell you, I always have a set of jokes of I always have film jokes that are ready to go. How does a first AD practice birth control? His personality. These are all only if you're in the film business, you would get this. What are the only 2 entry-level jobs on a film set? PA and director. What else? Why don't DPs smoke on set? Because it would take 6 hours to fucking light it.
And a shout
These
out.
are my dad jokes in my older age that are just coming out, and that's what I'm like after lunch. And that sort of is like the way I like to keep a set together,
And shout out to Michael. Peace,
no politics. Yeah.
So
Michael, he's a sweetheart. Michael's such an amazing human being, by the way.
Yes, he is.
He's such a sweet soul and such a good, generous, spiritual human being. And I was so lucky to have him on Stolen Dough. He did such a great job in that movie, and he looks so good, so well lit. I lit him so nicely in a mansion. And he has been a real, actually before when I just was working with friends for designers that I just knew, 6 years ago, the poster of The Girl Who Cannot Speak was designed by Michael.
Yep. And,
that's how you start off. You don't know anything and you're starting off with your friends. And that's an iconic poster for me. And it's one of the films that is closest to my heart. So I always think of Michael as just one of the best, just a genuine soul. Very genuine soul.
Now, are there any additional thoughts on peace that you would like to share with the audience?
The one thing I would say is I believe that we're creative beings, and I don't think that this is said enough, but making art brings peace, and making art makes you happy. And it doesn't mean anyone has to see it, but there's a book that I'm reading. Actually, I saw it at the MoMA, and I got this book, and I would recommend it. I highly recommend it. That I'm reading right now, and I really cycle through one book at a time. I'm not a multiple book reader. I
understand. I'm that way too.
Yeah, I was reading the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, because I follow Ryan Holiday and his daily Stoic newsletter. So I was reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, which is his diary. And so I'm out of that Stoic is out. Like I still have it with me. I carry it with me. But this is the book that I would highly recommend.
How art can make you happy. I love that title.
It's a great book. It's a short read, and I believe in it a lot. And another book that was fundamental to my teenage years, fundamental also about art. It's by David Lynch. You don't have to like him as a director. You don't have to love Twin Peaks or Mulholland Drive. There's again, small book called Catching the Big Fish. And it's essentially about ideas, and that shallow ideas, poor ideas, they're on the surface, but the great ideas are deep inside. And so and they're abstract. And catching good art comes from abstract ideas. That's all. That's the two books that I would say. And that they bring me peace. So for people, making art brings peace.
And on that same note, I don't know if you're familiar with Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way.
Of course.
Book has brought a lot of peace as well.
Of course. Morning pages. Trying to get through those morning pages in the morning.
Yes, but those morning pages are great.
Yes. That is a old school reference. I love that. That's the first. I mean, that's like the hit, right? Like that's like, for me, that was the first sort of creative workbook ever. That's like, someone seeing Wayne Dyer on PBS. That's like, oh man, it's like it's like Joseph Campbell on PBS. It's like it's that first hit. Julia Cameron was instrumental in getting artists unblocked. Yes. I always wanted to see her. Yes, I always wanted to see her. I know she gave talks in New York, but I never saw her speak live. I always wanted to take part in one of her workshops.
I will mention this. She will be at Kapalu.
Wow, yeah, in Massachusetts.
Yes, so there's an opportunity for everyone. Shout out, because I love Kapalu, and they have some great people coming, and they also do offer online opportunities, so check that out.
Mm-hmm.
I think Julia's might be online as well, so love her. Just as I know. So I would love to thank you, Stefano, for being part of Unique Piece this morning, and encourage everyone to watch Stolen Dough on Amazon or Apple TV, plus your other two, because they are very well written and well directed as well. And thank you. We're going to put Stefano in the green room for a moment. We'll be right back. So thank you, everyone. And next week, I am excited to have Erica. She is a children's writer, and she writes about peace and finding ourselves. So join me in talking with her next Sunday at 11 a.m. And I want to thank everybody who joined us this morning. Have a great and peaceful day.